Eli sat on the creaky wooden chair by the window, staring out at the parched land that stretched as far as the eye could see. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the dusty fields of Kansas. Each day felt like a battle against the relentless drought, and Eli had fought valiantly to keep his ranch alive. But now, after months without rain, his efforts seemed to be slipping away like sand through his fingers. He was once a proud rancher, full of hopes and dreams alongside his late wife. Together, they had envisioned a thriving homestead with laughter echoing off the walls. But since her passing 2 years ago, loneliness had settled into those same walls like an unwelcome guest. Eli often found himself talking to the wide-open spaces around him, sharing stories with the wind that rustled through the dry grass. His heart felt heavy, a weight that never seemed to lift. With each passing day, Eli's spirits sank deeper. The cattle were thin and listless, their bodies struggling for nourishment from the cracked earth. He had done everything he could, planted seeds that never sprouted and prayed for rain that didn't come. The fear of losing everything he had worked for gnawed at him constantly. Though he tried to keep himself busy with chores, every task reminded him of what he had lost, the warmth of family and love. One chilly evening, while stoking the fire in his pot-bellied stove, Eli heard an unexpected sound, a faint cry drifting through the stillness of dusk. Curiosity piqued, he rose from his chair and stepped outside into the cool air. As he squinted into the gathering shadows, he saw a figure stumbling toward him, a woman cradling 3 tiny bundles against her chest. Eli's first instinct was to turn her away. After all, he had barely enough food for himself. But then he noticed how pale she was and how frail her children appeared, sickly little faces peeking out from beneath worn blankets. Compassion welled up inside him as he recalled how desperately he had needed help back when tragedy struck his own life. "Come in," Eli said gently, stepping aside to let them pass through his door. The family huddled close to the stove's warmth, shivering against its heat but also seeking solace within its embrace. As Eli prepared some cornmeal mush for them, the only food left in the house, he felt an unfamiliar tug at his heartstrings. The woman introduced herself as Clara while settling onto a tattered quilt on the floor with her children nestled beside her. She explained how they had traveled from a nearby town in search of safety and shelter after falling ill during their journey. Her voice trembled slightly but held a strength Eli admired. As night fell outside and darkness enveloped them like a thick blanket, Eli found himself listening intently to Clara's stories, tales of her life before tragedy struck her family and dreams she still held onto despite overwhelming odds. They exchanged laughs and shared sorrowful moments over bowls of mush by flickering firelight. In this small space filled with warmth and vulnerability, something began to change within Eli. He realized that perhaps caring for these strangers could bring meaning back into his life, a chance to feel connected again after so much time spent alone. Clara's presence stirred memories buried deep within him of laughter shared with loved ones around dinner tables and dreams whispered under starry skies, and rekindled a desire to fight for something greater than just survival, a family once more. Little did Eli know that this encounter would alter not only his path but also shape their futures together as spring approached on the horizon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a chill swept across the Kansas plains. Eli tightened his worn coat around him and peered outside, feeling as though the heavy evening air was pressing down on his shoulders. The crackling of the fire provided minimal warmth compared to the isolation that surrounded him. Just as he settled back into his chair, he heard a faint cry drifting through the stillness, breaking the eerie silence of night. His heart quickened at the sound. Curiosity mixed with a flicker of unease as he stepped outside, squinting into the shadows that danced along the ground. The light from his house illuminated a figure stumbling toward him, a woman, pale and weary, with 3 tiny bundles cradled tightly against her chest. Eli's instinct urged him to turn back inside. After all, he had little to offer, and strangers were often more trouble than they were worth. Yet, something deeper tugged at him. The sight of her frail frame and desperate eyes ignited a sense of compassion that he had almost forgotten existed within him. "Please, I need help," she gasped, her voice trembling against the biting cold. Eli took a breath and took a step forward, unable to look away from the fragile children peeking out from their blankets. "What happened?" Eli asked, trying to sound steady even as uncertainty flooded his thoughts. He could see they were sick, their cheeks were flushed with fever and their little bodies shivered from both cold and illness. "I'm Clara," she replied softly, her voice cracking. "We've been traveling for days. My children are ill and I didn't know where else to go." There was a raw sadness in her eyes that pulled at Eli's heartstrings like an old melody long forgotten. "Come in," he finally said, stepping aside reluctantly but resolutely to let them pass through his door. Clara shivered as she entered his small cabin, clutching her babies closer for warmth. Eli closed the door behind them, sealing out the cold night air and ushering them into a flickering world of dim light. The room was simple, just a table with mismatched chairs and a pot-bellied stove that crackled with life, but it felt suddenly different with Clara and her children there. As they gathered close to the stove's warmth, Eli hurried to prepare something for them to eat. The only food he had left was cornmeal mush, the last remnants of his meager pantry. but it would have to do. Clara settled onto an old quilt on the floor while Eli filled bowls with the mush. She placed her children beside her. 3 small faces, 2 girls and a boy, huddled together under frail blankets. They looked up at Eli with wide eyes filled with both fear and gratitude. "I'm sorry for imposing," Clara murmured as Eli handed her a bowl. "But I didn't know where else to turn." Her voice held a blend of vulnerability and strength that intrigued him. As they ate quietly by the light of the fire, Eli began to listen, not just to Clara's words but to her spirit. She shared snippets of her life, how she had once known joy before hardship struck, and he found himself wanting to know more about this woman who had braved so much. As laughter mingled with tears over shared stories of loss and hope, Eli felt something shift within him. Here was companionship against loneliness. A connection sparked in an unexpected moment of kindness. He realized that perhaps opening his home wasn't just about offering shelter but also about allowing warmth back into his heart. In that flickering light beside the pot-bellied stove, Eli started seeing Clara not merely as a stranger, but as someone who could help mend his broken spirit. Little did he know how profoundly this decision would change them both forever as they began weaving their lives together in ways they could never have anticipated. The days that followed Clara's arrival were filled with both challenges and moments of unexpected warmth. Eli had never imagined that sharing his sparse resources could forge such a strong bond between them. With the triplets still weak and feverish, every task felt like an uphill battle, yet they faced it together. Eli found himself waking early each morning, long before the sun broke over the horizon. He would stoke the fire to keep the cabin warm and then check on Clara and the children, ensuring they were comfortable. The sight of Clara nursing her sick little ones tugged at his heart. She was exhausted, her eyes heavy with worry and fatigue. Eli had little food left, but he made sure to portion out the cornmeal carefully, using what little he had to create thin gruel for Clara and her children. "Here," he said one morning, setting a bowl of mush on the floor beside her. "It's not much, but it should help." Clara's gratitude warmed him more than the fire ever could, even as she looked at the bowl with a mix of appreciation and concern. "Thank you, Eli," she replied softly, her voice still tinged with weariness. "I wish I had more to offer in return." But Eli simply shook his head, realizing that her presence alone was already a gift he hadn't known he needed. The days blurred together as they worked side by side, trying to bring some comfort to the ailing children. Clara spent hours cradling them in her arms, whispering soothing words as Eli busied himself around the homestead. He fetched water from a nearby well and gathered what little hay remained for their few cattle, often feeling the weight of responsibility press upon him like a heavy blanket. As they worked, Clara began to share more about her life before hardship had struck. Her stories flowed like the gentle breeze that rustled through the cracks in the cabin. A life filled with laughter and love before illness took its toll. Eli listened intently, captivated by her strength and resilience. In return, he shared tales of his own past, speaking of his late wife and the dreams they once held together for their homestead. Despite their shared laughter and moments of camaraderie, the reality of their situation loomed large. The children's health fluctuated. Some days they seemed to rally a little, while others brought setbacks that left Clara feeling helpless. Eli watched as she tended to their fevers with makeshift remedies, using cool cloths on their brows and murmuring reassurances that seemed to bring them comfort. One particularly chilly evening, as a fierce wind howled outside, Eli returned from checking on the cattle to find Clara huddled close to the stove with all 3 children nestled against her. The flickering light cast shadows across their faces, illuminating Clara's worried lines as she stroked their hair gently. "Tomorrow, we'll need to find something more for them," Eli said, determination rising within him. "I can't let them go hungry when we're all in this together." Clara nodded, understanding that they were in uncharted waters but grateful for his resolve. With each passing day, they forged a rhythm together, Eli taking on tasks outside while Clara cared for the children inside. They learned to depend on one another in ways that felt foreign yet comforting. Together they had become more than just 2 individuals brought together by circumstance. They were now partners facing adversity head-on. Amidst their struggles, laughter occasionally bubbled up like a spring emerging from drought-stricken ground. They found joy in small victories, when one of the triplets managed to eat a few spoonfuls of mush or when Clara smiled genuinely for the first time in days. Each moment knit their hearts tighter than rawhide, binding them together in an unbreakable bond as they navigated this challenging chapter of their lives. Little did they know that these trials would pave the way for healing and renewal as spring approached on the horizon. As the nights progressed, the chill of the Kansas air seeped into the cabin, yet warmth blossomed within its walls as Eli and Clara found solace in each other's company. With the triplets needing constant care, Clara's hands grew calloused from nursing them back to health, but her spirit remained strong. Eli admired her resilience and soon discovered that their shared responsibilities created a rhythm that allowed them to open up to one another. One evening, after tending to the children, Clara suggested they quilt bandages for their ailing little ones. "It's not just for them," she said with a soft smile. "It will help keep my mind off things." Eli nodded in agreement, intrigued by the idea. She gathered scraps of fabric left from her tattered clothes while he fetched needle and thread from his meager supplies. As they worked side by side, the flickering light of the pot-bellied stove illuminated their faces, casting playful shadows on the walls. They stitched together pieces of fabric, their fingers moving in unison, often brushing against each other inadvertently. A touch that felt oddly comforting. The act of quilting became more than just a necessity. It transformed into a way to weave their lives and stories together. "I used to do this with my wife," Eli admitted one night, his voice tinged with nostalgia as he threaded another piece of fabric. "We would quilt under the stars during warm summer nights. She always said it was about crafting warmth not just for our bodies but for our hearts." Clara paused, looking up at him with curiosity in her eyes. "What was she like?" she asked gently. Eli hesitated, memories flooding back, the laughter shared over simple meals, the dreams they spun together of a thriving ranch filled with children. "She was my support in every way," he finally said, "always believing in me even when I doubted myself." A shadow crossed his face as he recalled his loss. He had not spoken about his wife in years. Clara's gaze softened. "I understand that kind of love," she replied quietly, her fingers deftly knotting pieces together. "I had that once too, before everything changed." She shared tales of her past life filled with hope and dreams for her children that had been dashed by illness and hardship. Her voice wavered as she spoke of the joy she once knew, the laughter of her children echoing through sunny days. The more they shared their stories, the deeper their bond grew. They began revealing their dreams for the future. Clara spoke of wanting a home where her children could run freely and laugh without fear of illness or hunger. Eli listened intently, inspired by her hopes as he relayed his own vision, a ranch flourishing once again beneath wide-open skies with laughter echoing through its halls. Nights turned into weeks as they stitched bandages for their little ones and crafted new dreams for themselves. The act of quilting brought forth moments of laughter, Eli teasing Clara about her crooked stitches or Clara playfully rolling her eyes at Eli's attempts to be artistic with fabric choices. Each laugh acted like stitches binding them closer together. One particularly cold night as they finished another quilted bandage for one of the triplets, Clara sat back and sighed contentedly. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she confessed softly. "After all I've lost, it's hard to imagine hope." Eli looked at her thoughtfully, realizing how much he too had struggled to find light after loss. "Hope can be like this quilt we're making," he replied gently. "It may start with frayed pieces and patches but can create something beautiful when we put it all together." As they continued to quilt late into the night, they found comfort not just in their work but also in each other's presence, two souls mending wounds through shared memories and dreams while weaving a new story filled with love and resilience amidst uncertainty. Little did they know that these quiet moments spent together would shape their futures forever as spring began hinting at its approach outside their cabin door. As winter lingered longer than expected, the days had started to feel like an endless stretch of gray skies and biting winds. Eli and Clara continued to care for the triplets, their temperatures slowly ebbing and their energy sometimes flickering back to life. The days felt heavy with uncertainty, yet hope remained a faint flame flickering between the cracks of their rustic cabin walls. One morning, as the first rays of sun pierced through the thick clouds, Eli awoke to a different world. The chill in the air was still present, but there was a gentler light filtering into the room. Spring had finally come knocking, promising warmth and renewal. Eli could hardly believe it as he watched the sunlight dance on the surfaces of his small home. He hurried to the window and peered outside. A soft breeze carried hints of fresh greenery intertwining with the earthy aroma of damp soil, a sign that life was starting to awaken again. The sight filled him with anticipation. He rushed to check on Clara and the children. "Clara, you have to see this," he called, barely containing his excitement. She appeared moments later, her hair tousled but her eyes brightening at the energy that filled the air. "What is it?" she asked, curiosity piqued. "It's spring. The world outside is changing," Eli replied, stepping aside to let her glimpse through the window. Clara stood beside him, a smile blooming on her lips as she took in the beauty outside. As they continued to observe nature coming back to life, they heard a soft whimper from one of the triplets. Clara quickly turned her attention back to them. "Oh dear, let's see how they're doing," she murmured. To their amazement, Clara carefully examined each child and noticed their cheeks were no longer flushed with fever, but rather had a hint of rose tint returning. A promising sign. "Look at them," she whispered with awe. "They're actually responding." It was as if the arrival of spring had rejuvenated not only the land but also her children's spirits. Day by day, in this newfound warmth, laughter slowly returned to their home. Eli brought in wildflowers blooming along the edges of their land and placed them in jars around the cabin, filling their days with color and beauty. The triplets began playing again, breaking free from their previous languor. It was a joyful transformation that filled Clara's heart with gratitude. One evening as they sat close together near the pot-bellied stove, a cozy warmth embraced them not just from the fire but from hope radiating between them. Eli turned toward Clara with a more serious expression. "What do you think our lives will look like now?" he asked, both apprehensive and eager. "I believe they will be brighter," she replied thoughtfully. "I've learned not just how to care for my children but also how joy can find its way back into our hearts." Her words resonated deeply with him. Winter's shadows were melting away like snow under a warm sun. Together they discussed any plans they might have for this new life, how they could turn efforts into a homestead that bloomed alongside their hopes for love and family. They envisioned planting crops in abundance once more and filled their evenings with dreams of laughter resounding through wide-open fields where children could run freely without fear. Then came one enchanting afternoon when all three triplets managed to sit up independently for the first time in weeks. Joy washed over Clara as she clapped her hands excitedly, urging Eli to witness the small miracle. Each giggle from the children felt like music swelling inside them all, an affirmation that they were moving forward together toward brighter days. As the seasons shifted, Eli soon recognized how these small yet significant changes reflected deeper transformations within themselves. The elegant weaving of their lives together symbolized hope that blossoms from adversity. Spring had arrived, casting away lingering doubts and ushering in new laughter, love, and possibilities as life surged fiercely forward once more within their hearts and homestead alike. Little did they know that what lay ahead would truly test their newfound strength, but also deepen their bonds beyond anything they could imagine. As the warmth of spring settled upon the Kansas ranch, Eli felt an unfamiliar sense of contentment growing within him. The vibrant colors of wildflowers now dotted the land and the laughter of Clara's triplets filled their little cabin, echoing joy that had once seemed impossible. With each passing day, the connection Eli shared with Clara and her children deepened, transforming from mere companionship into a bond that felt remarkably like family. One evening, while gathering around the table after a modest meal, Eli watched the triplets play with handmade toys Clara had created from scraps. Their giggles were like music to his ears, lifting a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for so long. It struck Eli how different life was now. He wasn't just a solitary rancher anymore, he was part of something larger, a family grounded in love and laughter. "You seem deep in thought," Clara said softly, stitching a patch onto one of the children's clothes as she looked up at him with a curious sparkle in her eyes. Eli smiled, feeling warmth radiate through every corner of his heart. "I was just thinking about how much things have changed since you arrived," Eli admitted. "I never thought I could find joy again after everything." His voice trailed off as memories of his late wife gripped him momentarily, bringing both ache and recognition. But with those memories also came a spark of hope. He could feel himself healing alongside Clara and the triplets. Clara set down her sewing and leaned closer. "I understand," she replied gently. "I've always felt so alone after losing everything, yet here we are, building something together." That shared understanding brought healing to Eli's heart as well. Each story exchanged over the meal was not just about loss but about how they were rising from it together. The moments they had spent stitching cloth for bandages and caring for each other's children began mending their wounds beyond what either had felt possible. Days turned to weeks, and as the triplets grew stronger, Eli found himself taking on tasks with newfound vigor. He spent hours working on the fields that had sat neglected for too long, tilling the soil, planting seeds for harvests yet to come, all while Clara managed the home front with grace and care. They complemented each other perfectly in this unanticipated choreography of life. One bright morning, Eli stood outside watching the triplets splash in a puddle formed by recent rains. Their laughter rang out like bells in the air, life thriving amidst land once beaten down by drought. In that moment of clarity, he realized he hadn't just welcomed them into his home. They had woven themselves into his heart. "Come on out here. Join us," one of the girls called out excitedly as she squealed in delight while jumping through droplets. Eli chuckled, unable to resist their invitation. He felt a tugging urge at his heartstrings to be part of that unadulterated joy rather than watching from afar. As he ran toward them, his laughter mingling with theirs, he discovered a profound sense of belonging he hadn't anticipated. Clara watched him play, entirely lost in simple happiness, and couldn't help but smile brightly. It was no longer just her children bringing laughter into their lives, but Eli who now embodied that joyful spirit they all craved so deeply. In those cherished moments as they splashed gleefully together in warm sunlight, Eli embraced his role not just as protector but as nurturer, a fatherly figure alongside Clara. Their lives beautifully entwined through seasons of laughter and love blooming after despair. As he gazed at Clara from across the water-splattered surface of joy-filled faces before him, Eli understood this journey was about more than survival. It was about rebuilding dreams lost along the way and creating a vibrant tapestry rich in hope. A family born from tragedy aiming toward beautiful horizons ahead, where love would flourish endlessly as spring gathered strength in its embrace. With the arrival of spring, Eli, Clara, and the triplets became more than just cohabitants in the small cabin. They evolved into a cohesive family unit determined to revive their ranch. Each day brought new energy and purpose as they combined their strengths to reclaim their land from the effects of drought and despair. The once desolate fields now harbored promise, igniting dreams of a thriving homestead. Eli rose early each morning, invigorated by the warmth of the sun spilling across the horizon and the laughter of the triplets playing outside. After a quick breakfast, he gathered Clara and the children to discuss their plans for the day over steaming bowls of cornmeal mush. "Today, we'll start working on the west field," he announced, his enthusiasm infectious. Clara smiled at him, her eyes sparkling with determination. "I'll take care of the smaller chores around here," she replied, looking at the triplets who were eager to help. "But I'll prepare a hearty lunch for us when you come back." The children cheered at the prospect of spending time with their fatherly figure and jumped up, ready to assist wherever they could. "We want to help too," one of the boys exclaimed, his tiny fists raised in excitement. Eli knelt down to their level, a grin spreading across his face. "You can help me with planting seeds later on," he said. "But first, let's see how well you can carry water from the well." They nodded eagerly and raced off toward the well, their giggles trailing behind them like joyful music. As Eli tended to the west field, guiding the children in learning which seeds to plant, he felt a sense of pride swell within him. They worked diligently under the warm sun, laughing and learning as they dug into the earth. Clara would occasionally join them, offering guidance and encouragement while also supervising from a distance. The simple act of planting seeds became an important lesson not just in farming but in cooperation and family bonding. Eli reveled in the sight of Clara's well-being returning alongside her children's growth. Together, they shared responsibilities, Clara humming soft tunes as she prepared meals while Eli cultivated the land, all intertwined like the roots of the very crops they sought to grow. As days turned into weeks, they established rituals that united them further. Each evening after dinner, they would gather around their pot-bellied stove, Eli telling stories about life on the ranch before Clara arrived or sharing tales from his childhood. As Clara recounted stories of her happy past before tragedy struck, Eli listened intently, hanging on to every word as if it were a lifeline pulling them both toward hope. One particularly meaningful evening, after sharing stories and laughter over supper, Clara broached an important subject. "Eli," she said thoughtfully, "what do you envision for this place? What kind of life do you want to build here?" Eli paused before answering. It was a question that had been hovering over him without making its presence known. "I want a place where my children, our children, can grow strong and free," he finally said. "A place filled with laughter and love." The sincerity in his tone made Clara's heart swell. Over time and through shared efforts, it became evident that they were indeed building something wonderful together, a sanctuary where dreams took root just as surely as the seeds nestled in the rich soil of their fields. Cared-for plants bloomed with abundance, the triplets thrived in an atmosphere filled with love and nurturing support. As summer approached, Eli felt gratitude washing over him like refreshing rain after a long drought. He had gained not only a family but also reclaimed hope for his own heart amidst life's unpredictability. Through hard work and collaboration, this small family not only revived their ranch but also cultivated everlasting bonds that would sustain them through all seasons of life ahead, together in unity against whatever storms may come their way. Just as the family began to feel comfortable in their routine, a sudden change in weather threatened everything they had worked so hard to build. One fateful evening, dark clouds gathered on the horizon and the air grew heavy with tension. The first crack of thunder echoed like a warning shot across the plains, sending a chill through Eli as he watched from the porch. Clara stepped outside beside him, her expression mirroring his unease. "Do you think it will pass us by?" she asked, hopefully glancing at the darkening skies. "I wish I could say yes," Eli replied somberly. "But it looks like a storm is coming our way." As the storm rolled in, rain fell in heavy torrents, soaking the earth that had just begun to breathe life again. They watched anxiously as water pooled in the fields they had worked so hard to cultivate. While rain was necessary for their crops, this downpour felt overwhelming and threatening. The panic settled in Eli's heart as memories of previous hardships resurfaced. Just when things seemed to be improving, was this really happening again? The night grew darker and wilder as high winds battered against the cabin walls. The children huddled together on blankets near the hearth while Clara attempted to keep them calm with stories about brave animals facing storms. Eli rushed to secure what he could outside, battling against the wind that howled like a wild beast. "Eli, come back," Clara called out, concern etched in her voice as she watched him struggle against the elements. "I have to protect our home," he shouted back, his determination unwavering. With every gust of wind and loud clap of thunder overhead, Eli's heart pounded. He managed to secure loose items and reinforce the barn doors before racing inside, drenched but determined. As he entered the cabin breathless and covered in mud, Clara met him with wide eyes. "What if it floods? What if we lose everything?" she whispered frantically, clutching her children close. Eli took a deep breath, realizing it was in moments like these that their bond would be truly tested. "We've faced challenges before," he said firmly, looking around at his family huddled together in fear. "This storm is just another obstacle we can overcome together." Clara nodded, drawing strength from his words. "We'll get through this as long as we work together," she replied resolutely. It was a statement filled with resolve that resonated throughout the cabin. As winds howled outside and rain poured down relentlessly, Eli gathered everyone near the pot-bellied stove for warmth. He initiated a plan that harnessed their unique strengths. Clara would keep watch over the children while sharing cheerful stories that could drown out any fear. Eli would venture outside periodically to check for debris and ensure their home was secured. Hours passed like days as they endured the storm's wrath together. Clara led games amid frightful noises. Eli's laughter filled the air and helped ease tension, reminding them all of joy amid chaos. They shared stories about rabbits who bravely ventured into storms, each tale more fantastical than the last, each word weaving hope into their hearts. In that little cabin filled with laughter entwined with fear, they embraced uncertainty as a family. Eli realized how much stronger they were together than alone. Their unity fortified them against whatever challenges lay ahead, not just tonight but always. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, dawn broke through cracked clouds heralding a new beginning. The storm had passed but left behind remnants of its fury, including scattered debris and waterlogged fields, but also rebirth and resilience. As they emerged from their cabin into crisp morning air filled with bird calls and sunlight streaming across soaked grasslands, they were greeted by an unexpected sight: tiny green shoots pushing through the soil where they had planted seeds earlier that spring. Eli looked at Clara and then at his children, each face illuminated with newfound hope and determination. "We've weathered a storm," he said proudly, "and look what's rising from it." In that moment of awe and triumph over adversity, they embodied resilience built on love. They became living symbols of strength bound together through trials faced collectively. A family forged not simply by blood but by shared struggles, meeting hope head-on against whatever storms might come their way again in life ahead. As the days grew longer and warmer, the small ranch transformed into a lively place filled with laughter and love. Eli felt a renewed sense of purpose as he embraced his role as a father figure to Clara's triplets. His heart swelled with pride every time he saw them playing or helping him in the fields. The bond that had formed between them was undeniable, and soon it felt as if they were not just sharing a home, but creating a new life together. One afternoon, Eli sat on the porch watching the children chase butterflies through their blooming garden while Clara prepared a light lunch inside. As the sunlight flickered through the branches of the nearby trees, Eli couldn't help but smile at the sight. Their happiness echoed through his soul. It was a stark contrast to the solitude he had known for so long, and he felt grateful for every moment they shared. "Eli," one of the boys squealed, running up to him with eyes wide open like saucers. "Look what we found." He proudly held out a small bird's nest with a couple of eggs nestled safely inside. "That's amazing," Eli exclaimed, bending down to examine the nest closely. "But we have to make sure we don't disturb it too much. We want the mama bird to be able to take care of her babies, just like we do with you guys." The triplets giggled at his comparison, their voices bubbling over with excitement. "You're like our dad now," one of the girls shouted playfully, making Eli's heart pause for just a moment. The title felt both wonderful and daunting. Still, he knew in his heart that he was stepping into that role willingly and wholeheartedly. That evening, after another day filled with shared chores and laughter, Clara invited Eli outside under the stars. "Look how clear the sky is," she said softly, gesturing towards the twinkling constellations above them. "You can really feel the magic in moments like this." They sat side by side on the porch steps, the air still warm from the day's sun. "I couldn't have dreamed this kind of life for myself after everything," Eli admitted quietly. The shadows cast by flickering lanterns danced on their faces as Clara listened intently. "You've brought so much back into my life too," Clara replied, leaning against him slightly. "I've given up hope before, but you've shown me how beautiful it is to dream again." Eli turned to meet her gaze and saw reflected within it not just gratitude but also a spark of shared hope, a future they could build together for their family. In that moment, he realized that they had successfully woven their pasts together and found common ground built upon love. "Let's not just be hopeful, let's make plans," Eli suggested suddenly with newfound excitement. "We need to set goals for our homestead, what crops we want to grow next season, maybe even build a sturdy fence around the fields." "Yes," Clara said animatedly, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "And I'd love to plant some flowers along the pathway leading to the house." Their dreams took shape as they started discussing who would take care of specific tasks. The children chimed in with ideas and wishes of their own, suggesting names for new projects and their thoughts on how things should look. Over time, they put these plans into action, waking early each morning in anticipation of what they would accomplish together. They each poured their efforts into not only taking care of their crops but also nurturing one another emotionally. Whenever doubt crept in about whether they could maintain this life or create something meaningful, they simply looked at each other and felt strengthened by their collective resolve. Days turned into weeks and soon into months. Under Eli's guidance as a nurturer and protector, their little family flourished amid joyful chaos as shared responsibilities were met with laughter instead of burden. The bond between Eli, Clara, and the triplets became unbreakable. They were no longer merely surviving together but thriving as a united front fueled by determination, dreaming big for their future. As summer unfolded, Eli truly understood that family wasn't defined by blood alone but by shared experiences woven together through acts of love, a connection bound tighter than rawhide and rich in opportunities for growth ahead. When he looked at Clara holding her children close to her side, deep feelings of warmth flooded his heart. He felt whole once again, discovering anew how wonderful it could be to embrace purpose and love alongside them all in this beautiful new chapter together. As summer settled over the Kansas prairie, the ranch continued to thrive, reflecting the love and hard work that Eli, Clara, and the triplets poured into it. Days filled with laughter, shared chores, and dreams of a bright future blended into weeks of warmth and companionship. The crops grew tall and golden, but more importantly, so did their bonds as a family. Eli often found himself reflecting on the journey they had taken together. He marveled at how he had transitioned from a lonely widower to a devoted father figure. His heart swelled with pride whenever he looked at Clara's children, now flourishing under the care of both him and their mother. They were no longer just survivors of unforeseen circumstances, they had become creators of a joyful life. One evening, while sitting around the dinner table filled with fresh produce from their garden, laughter erupted as the children recounted tales of their day in the fields. With Clara's gentle encouragement, they shared stories peppered with imagination and adventure where their crops fought off invading critters and turned into superheroes saving their homestead. Eli couldn't help but chuckle at their lively antics. Maybe we should celebrate their bravery with a special feast, Clara suggested, her eyes shining with excitement. We could roast some corn and bake a pie with those berries we picked last week. The children clapped in delight at the thought. Yes, and we can make a sign to hang outside that says heroic crops, one of the girls yelled enthusiastically, her spirit infectious. Eli couldn't remember the last time he felt such lightness in his heart. At that moment, surrounded by Clara and her animated children, he recognized just how far they had come together. It was astonishing how love had woven its way through every aspect of their lives, turning trials into triumphs and ordinary days into cherished memories. As dusk approached, Eli stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over their home. He took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of blooming flowers, completing the tableau of joy surrounding him. The worries that once consumed him seemed distant now. The love he shared with Clara and her triplets had created a haven for them all. In that moment, Eli made a promise to continually nurture this bond they had built together. While they may have faced harsh weather or other turbulent times ahead, he was committed to standing beside Clara and their children through thick and thin. His heart brimmed anew with hope for what lay ahead as they faced life's uncertainties together hand in hand. As laughter echoed from inside where Clara worked to prepare for their makeshift feast in celebration of their adventures, Eli felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. They might have faced challenges along the way, but together they were stronger than any obstacle life could throw at them. The warmth radiating from within that small cabin illustrated not just survival but resilience built on love, the kind that turns hardship into healing and despair into abundance. Eli appreciated how companionship allows people to rise again even when hope seems lost. Love truly is a powerful catalyst capable of igniting transformation. With joy swelling in his heart, he understood that no matter how difficult times became or what unknowns appeared on the horizon, they would always stand united as one big family filled with warmth and optimism for brighter tomorrows. As the first stars began to twinkle against the canvas of night above them, Eli reflected on this family journey marked by growth. A tapestry enriched by love woven tighter than rawhide through every hardship encountered together and brighter days awaiting them all down life's winding path ahead.